straw, the long straw, one of them.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name is Bruce Yancey. I live at 1026 Pawnee Drive in Elizabethtown. I've been there for just over 12 years. I picked my wife up for the prom in 1979 from this neighborhood, and after 25 years in the Army, that was the only neighborhood I wanted to be in. I knew that, and that's where we settled, and we've been there ever since and invested our lives into this neighborhood. I'm here tonight to propose a city ordinance to prohibit semi-trucks from using Indian Hills as a thoroughfare to conduct business with tenants in the business park located at 950 North Mulberry. In particular, I'm speaking of Elizabethtown Paint and Decorating. I believe that this is a safety and a quality of life issue for the residents of this neighborhood, and this has gone on for way too long. There's a sign that the mayor, I believe, spoke to me 2 weeks ago that there's been a sign posted on Mulberry on the Pawnee side that's prohibited semi-trucks for years. However, was never a city ordinance passed to make that law effective, that ordinance effective. Is that correct?
As I understand, there was never a city ordinance passed. And I don't know exactly when the sign went up.
And it's still there today.
There's one across the street from North Main.
Um, I'm kind of disappointed I have to be here to advocate for something like this, that it should be a no-brainer in my mind that, a neighborhood, you're taxing these residents, that put their lives into these neighborhoods, and it's safety and a quality of life issue for us. And when you took this up 2 weeks ago, my conversation with the mayor said that you couldn't get a consensus on this, that it was just one person complaining. I'm here tonight with about 30 signatures on a petition, and that's just the ones I could get to. And they're adamant, they are vocal about these trucks. They want it stopped. They know who they are, they want it stopped. And too many of them, like myself on the incident, have had to stop on Pawnee to get into their own neighborhood because these are unloading these trucks on Pawnee Drive, which regardless of the sign, that would be a violation of the law from what I understand. You can't stop on a street and unload a truck. But that's what's occurring. And at least a couple dozen of these said that same thing. They waited for these trucks to unload for them to get into their neighborhood.
Mr. Yancey, could I ask you a question? Is the complaint of the majority of the people in the neighborhood that you referenced there, the fact that they're having trouble getting through the
No,
street, or that we have an ordinance?
No, that they're using that neighborhood as a thoroughfare.
Okay.
Now, there's not enough, regardless, there's not enough room for these vehicles to be on there. And when they go off in the shoulder, they eat up our yards, we repair them. We look at it, we repair it.
You're talking about vehicles going
Oh,
around the truck?
no, they can't, there's no, for a semi truck and a car, one has to get off the road.
Okay.
And if you look at my yard, the asphalt's eaten up, and there's been times where I've had a trailer truck tire marked in the ground where it's been moist, and they've ridden through there because they gave kind of the right of way to the oncoming traffic. So I get to look at that. My neighbors get to look at it. They get to repair that. That's this business saying, we're gonna do this and you're gonna fix it yourselves. I took a picture, and I sent to you, the council members, on Friday, a letter saying my position on this. And I even gave a solution. I'm trying to fix this problem. I'm not trying to say, I'm not a bad guy. But as I looked today, and I looked actually yesterday and drove, have you seen the back of that business? There's more than adequate room for a semi truck. Now, what you can't do, and I'll show you a picture if you want to see it, they can't park their POVs behind there. They can't have a basketball hoop, or else semi trucks can get through there easily, and it's set up for that.
Aren't there dumpsters in behind the
There's
building
dumpsters
though?
right there.
That's,
Mr. Yancey?
Is that not a fire lane? Is that would not, I would think that, so you could park all the POVs you wanted back there, I assume.
Well, let me just say this. You mentioned in your letter that the only entrance is at the beginning, in between the Batteries Plus and the Preferred Ones.
Well, there's the Pawnee side too.
I understand. But you also mentioned in there that that entrance is too small
Oh,
for trucks.
Yes.
My business is Preferred Memorials.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm very, very familiar with the situation there. I'm very familiar with the problem that the trucks have there. It's not a new issue. The shopping center was built 20 years ago. I think the paint store was the first tenant 20 years ago. So I don't know what's happened in the past, but whatever has happened in the past has seemed to work. I understand that you don't like a semi truck coming through Pawnee Drive. But I think the first thing we need to clear up is is that sign says no through truck. No through truck means,
It doesn't say no through truck. It's got a semi truck.
I know, but in your comments, you mentioned no through trucks, that they're using this for a thoroughfare, and that's not what the trucks are doing. Trucks are making the delivery at the business park that you mentioned, and then they're trying to find a way out,
Right, exactly. And
That's
that's,
what
that way
they're trying
out
to
is not the neighborhood.
but that's not a thoroughfare.
What are you using it for then? What do you, so they don't have business in the neighborhood and they're cutting through the neighborhood. What would you call that then?
A thoroughfare means that they're using your neighborhood as a cut through to get through to another area of town, because it's a shorter distance.
Okay, then
The
we're semantics.
trucks-
Okay, we're getting semantics. Okay.
And that's the reason why the sign that Mr. Tab was talking about right on the other side of the road, that sign actually says no through trucks. But if there is a semi truck going down North Main because they're going to Danny's Tobacco Shop for a delivery.
Right.
They're legal, that's
I
not through.
got that
that's
all
not
day
cut
long.
through.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Even though the sign is an illegal sign that's down there now, because there's not an ordinance supporting the sign, they still have a reason to be in Indian Hills because they're going to the business park. Does that make any sense?
No.
They're not using it as a cut through. And let me continue. There are some truck drivers and some trucks that have the skill set and the availability to turn around and to then come nose forward back to North Mulberry Street. Okay? Some of those trucks then cannot make a right turn and come towards Elizabethtown because they can't make it because of that big ditch there. Okay? Some of the drivers, because of the trailer that they have, they simply don't have the skill set or the availability to turn around and then cut through that parking lot, especially when the dance studio was in operation. That's a very, very busy parking lot. So I really, and I appreciate your letter, but I don't see your solution as being a viable solution.
So to go in front of AutoZone and they get one or two pallets of shipment, you think 50 yards each direction is too much to ask this business to keep from going through this
Well,
residential neighborhood?
It's more than 50
That's what you-
yards, but the other thing about.
No, I'm just asking you, is that too, you think that's too much to ask a
No,
business to go maybe 200 yards total distance to stay out of a neighborhood is what you're telling me?
Well, let me ask you.
You'd rather them trash this neighborhood than do the right thing.
I don't want
Now, this marriage between this landlord and tenant, as I said, should have never happened if that was not accessible for their trucks. And now that it's not, now they're saying, let's use Pawnee and Indian Hills as the way to get through this.
well,
That ink should have never been dry. Before that ink was dry, they knew that this wasn't gonna work. You know that, right? I mean,
I have no
what
idea. I
was
wasn't here
said? I
20
mean,
years ago. so
they,
I'm not sure.
they're not stupid. They knew freight was gonna come in, right? They're paint people. They know these things come in. It's a hazardous material coming in on freight. Freight comes in large trucks. They knew that. So they knew that this place wasn't gonna work, and they had to have just said, oh, well, we'll let Indian Hills be the beneficiary of what the trash that's coming through here.
I'd just like to, and I think we could discuss this, what if and on and on and on. Two things I would point out, Mr. Yancey. Number one, obviously it's a work session and we cannot make, a final, we cannot pass an ordinance or say what we're gonna do with that ordinance today. It is a work session. Number two, out of respect to you and the other residents of the neighborhood that have complained, I would say to you and to this group, I would differ slightly with Mr. Shea. I think the question of us is, we've got an ordinance. And the first decision we've got to make is, do we pass an ordinance that supports that sign, or do we take that sign down? I think that's what we've got to do. And I know we can give all of these things, whether the trucks can get there or whether they can't, who it goes in front of. But I think that's what we've got to decide
And
right
years
now.
ago, there was that reason, that sign didn't just get put up there for no reason.
know.
It just didn't arbitrarily appear out of nowhere. Someone had an issue with those trucks going through.
But
the neighborhood.
apparently
don't
it
have an
did. If
ordinance
there's
that
no
backs
ordinance
that. I
behind it,
understand
it
that.
did.
But zoning just didn't drive by one day and have a sign, extra sign, and decide to put it
I
up.
agree.
I mean, are we, so,
We are on the same page.
so now I'm bringing this up, and I think the person, the impetus behind this, I found out was somebody local that's since moved out of that neighborhood, and that's probably why they're going through the neighborhood again. I won't mention their name, but
Well,
Yeah, I just want you to understand, obviously, we can't decide it today.
understand.
And we can
But
discuss all of these.
It's
options.
incumbent on that business, and if you read the mission statement on PPG Paints about being a good neighbor, and I'm in discussion with their regional representative about this incident as well. So I'm taking care of the end, and I don't know if you're aware of this whole incident, how this first came up, are you? Are you? And the bigotry and the hate and the violence that was directed towards me?
Did you start it with calling him an SOB?
You are kidding me. Where did you hear that now? So I know you're talking now. Now I know that within 24 hours now of me writing this letter to the council, Chuck Fillion decided to drive by my house and rev his engine and yell something, and which was witnessed by a neighbor. So I'm thinking that somebody on this council forwarded that memorandum to them or gave them
No.
information.
When this issue
So you
came
seem
up,
to know a lot about these people.
you're right, because my job as a city councilman is to hear your side, their side, and the truth is in
You
the
haven't talked to
middle.
me. Why didn't you come to me?
I knew
talked
you
to
were
them.
coming to council. We
talked
were
to
told you
them,
were coming
right?
to council. And I'm not the only council person that went out there and discussed this with the business.
Have you been to that location and looked and say that a truck can go back? They can easily go through
Yes,
the back
sir,
of
I
this.
have.
If you don't want to move 2 dumpsters to let
There's
this
no
neighborhood
exit when you go
have a
behind the
quality of life
business.
issue and the children, the safety, you're not concerned about that apparently.
Yancey,
Your business is what you want to run. And I know who you're in bed with, the business side of it.
I'm not in bed with
You are. You've already
Okay,
let this
okay,
out.
okay.
This is,
All I'm saying is there's no entrance, there's no exit.
are you telling me there's no way to make this work
No,
where they
there's
are with
no-
that one through the neighborhood? You're saying it's,
There's no exit
behind the business.
yes, there is. It goes all the way through. I drove through there yesterday.
In a semi,
with the semi.
you can barely do it in a.
Okay, then again,
Okay, all right, okay. Let us, okay, we've got it. Got your, and we know, got your opinion. Everybody has an opinion, okay?
this business should have never been in that location, and the landlord and
can't
tenant
go
both
back.
knew that. They
Okay.
both knew that.
But we can't
And
go
it's
back.
not to
We
push
can
it off
only-
on us.
We can only go forward, okay? So, give us a week, and next Monday night, we will either enact an ordinance to uphold that sign, or that sign will come down.
And,
we'll
and,
go from
and then
there,
I will guarantee
okay?
you, the next session, I'll bring back about over 90% of these people said they'd show up tonight.
Okay,
They'll be here.
fair enough. Thank you,
So
okay?
I would hope that you do the right thing and get this done. This is not right. And if it were your neighborhoods, I would expect you'd like the same thing.
I've got a semi coming through my neighborhood right now. so
Mayor,
know
I got
where
a
you are.
problem in my subdivision.
All right, so know exactly where you are. We'll talk about it next week, okay?
Thanks so much.
All right, Russell Checker. He's not here. Okay, well, I know Ed Pope's here. He's always here.
For a number of years, in dealing with development projects, in the community, we've had, developers ask about incentive programs the city may offer. Recently, that, inquiries as to incentive programs seem to be more frequent. So we started looking at, is that something the city would want to offer? A little history, 6 or 7 years ago, the city for 1 year did have a program where we were rebating the city's occupational tax to businesses that created new jobs. Along these lines, the state also offers a program that is known as tax increment financing, in which local communities can partner with developers. Typically, that program, when it's operated, the local community will issue bonds for public improvements that are made in partnership with private development or in a targeted area. And I'm sure a number of you all have read about those programs that have been done across the state, and they've had mixed results. So tonight, we'd like to start a discussion on a program. This isn't the solution, this isn't the end, but we have some ideas. So I think you all received in your packets for tonight a draft of a policy which contains in it a number of questions that we have. So the first thing, for those who may not have the policy in front of them, it would be proposed as a reimbursement incentive program. So the risk for the city then is, I guess, minimized, if you will, from some other programs, because it would be an investment made by a developer on a project, and then they'd get reimbursed for that. So there wouldn't be any city money up front financing a project. The way, just as that as the basic threshold, it would be targeted at new development. So we have not limited the application at this point. We haven't limited the size of a project. So that's kind of our first question. Based on that threshold, how comfortable is the council just to make it a policy that would be open to any kind of project, or should we establish threshold levels? The second item is based on reimbursement. We developed a sliding scale that, based on the investment that was made, the potential reimbursement on a project would range from 50% of the project cost up to 75% of the project cost. So again, that's another question that we need to discuss, is that reimbursement percentage and that sliding scale, and how the council feels about that. Also, the level of commitment for the project, because these are public improvements, they have to go through the city's review process. So again, that becomes another question for you, is to be eligible for a program for reimbursement, would you like to see developments at a higher standard that is over and above our minimums? And we can talk then too about what you may want to apply that to. There may be certain things that you want to encourage. So just as an example, I'm not saying this is what it would be, but as an example, you all may want to encourage wider sidewalks in a development. So specifically, we could draft the policy that would say, if that's what you want to encourage, if a development does that, then they would be eligible for additional reimbursement. Or if you all think that's the minimum as a threshold, then that could be a standard that's over and above our current standard that you'd have to then put into to qualify. I know in the draft that we gave you all, there's a couple percentages back and forth, and I wasn't trying to confuse people with varying percentages, but wanted to make sure that the way it's drafted, there are two levels. First, there's a percentage reimbursement of the project cost. So if you spent $250,000, the way it's drafted, you would be eligible for 70% reimbursement of that cost. So you're not going to recover all of your investment as a developer, but you could recover up to that number. The way we try to get to that on an annual basis then is based on the income stream that the city receives, and then we do a reimbursement based on that income stream. As we're proposing, we would sign a development agreement with the developer. That is a detail that would be spelled out in the development agreement, the reimbursement schedules and the project cost and those kind of things. So the discussion first is the policy and some of those questions that we have for you all. And then that leads to, like I said, the discussion about development agreements. And I think we would anticipate that those would be handled again project by project, and those would come back to you all for approval at that level. So if, as we move through this, there's, like I said, two levels of approval. First, the general policy and answering those standards, and then as projects proceed, we would bring those to you on specifically talk about individual projects. So that is a kind of a overview. I'm going to stop because we need some direction on some things and let you all give us that direction. And as the mayor pointed out earlier, we know know this is a work session, but we wanted to begin the dialogue because we're receiving inquiries, so we needed direction from the council as we deal with various projects that may be talking to us about development activity in the community.
And I think it's a great idea. I think it encourages development and it encourages beyond what we normally would require, and certainly the incentive to ask someone to take their development to a higher level, the city benefits from that. As far as what does that mean, that extra, I think I would yield to your office to say, what are those items, if it's a wider sidewalk, that are greater enhancements, as far as a list of those items that qualify for the additional 5%.
We've tried to limit in this first draft of it to the public improvements that are eligible. And I think that's important to emphasize that this is a public improvements policy that we've drafted for the council. That, as you point out, Marty, it's those, it's the streets and the sidewalks and the street lighting and the stormwater management, it's not directly to water and sewer utilities because we have some rebate programs for those kind of activities, but we really don't have programs that target these other type improvements. So that's why we tried to craft it more to address those concerns. And yeah, I mean, if that's what the council wants to look at is, okay, let's look at higher standards, then I think then we can work on that as the draft, saying, okay, then what activities would be and what would be a significant improvement that would make you then eligible.
I like the idea as well. And I like the idea of us, instead of us trying to pick winners and losers or what type of project, just to make it any type of project that has that infrastructure improvement. I'm not so crazy about what size the project is, but if we tie it to job creation, if we tie it to that, it seems like it's gonna lend itself to larger projects, just by the nature of it. I guess you could do it for a small project that somebody, take care of the development and infrastructure, stuff like that.
Because it is tied to public improvements, and that's what we're emphasizing is the public improvement aspect of
Project
things.
we would be doing anyway.
Well, sometimes the city does, but most of the time it's still done by a private developer. But those improvements, I mean, benefit not just that project, but the community as a whole, because they then become part of our overall network and system and those kinds of things. So that's where we've looked at trying to tie it to that. But as an example, and you're right, Terry, then somebody could make that decision. If we don't limit whether it's just new construction or a renovation type project, you could, in, for example, the older shopping centers in our community, you could see the owner, developer of that project may be wanting to upgrade a center, and they would maybe do some street or street lighting or sidewalk improvements in that
I'd be all in favor.
in that area. And again, so they would be eligible. And as you point out, then based on that investment, Terry, then they would have to make the decision. Okay, am I spending this enough to enter into an agreement with the city to try to get some of that back? And you're right, on a project like that, that investment is going to be a smaller number, so they're probably not going to hit the high end that we propose. They may only be eligible for 50% of their project cost, but again, that may be a good enough incentive for somebody to say, oh, if I can recover some of the costs, then it's worth for me to try to renovate. And again, the point to make though is this is public improvement. So if somebody says, well, I'm fixing the facade of the building, that's not eligible for this kind of thing. We're talking about streets, sidewalks, street lights, drainage improvements, those kind of public improvements that go on.
And the other thing is I would be in favor of incentive based on the minimum requirements, and then some type of a bonus or
you all prefer that we try to identify some of those issues in the policy, or is that a detail that in the overall policy you don't think we
I
need?
just think that if you identified it ahead of time, it's kind of like on the, planning commission. I mean, there's always waivers and exceptions and things like that, but as long as you have some kind of guidelines to begin with, my guess is that since this is a new policy, we'll have to have some tweaks along the way.
Sure.
Especially in the first 5 years. Maybe if you all could give us some guidelines as to what you would think are examples of above minimum standards.
If you could do that, I think it helps developers too, to
Sure.
know upfront.
Yeah,
Where are
because
those
they're gonna
red
ask that
flags?
question
Yeah.
too, you're right.
Yeah.
And most of the time, we should be able to give them a pretty good idea before they actually commit their dollars and their plans and their final approvals. In other words, yes, that's not gonna have a problem qualifying.
I'd be in favor of giving them an incentive too, as long as we get delivery trucks that back up and get out.
And, the one thing you didn't have a variance on is this is a 10-year payback. Is that,
I mean, that's what, I mean, we've looked at, some different programs, and they do have some longer periods of time in some of them. But I also, again, trying to look at the different programs the city has offered or participated in, or that the state has available. Yes, there are some that have time periods of 20 years. There's even one section of the TIF program based on if it's a larger project, that time period can go up to 30 years reimbursement. I think a lot of that probably has to do that it's tied to bond financing and stuff. But there are also a number of programs that the city has offered in conjunction with the state. And I know it's not for commercial projects, but on industrial projects. And that time period has been closer to that 10 years. So that's kind of why we, in the first draft of it to you all, kind of fell in that category. But I think if you all want to look at a longer reimbursement period, I mean, like I said, that's the direction we need from you all. I mean, we had to start somewhere, and that's why you chose the 10 years, because it's something we have done in the past for industrial rebates and stuff. But
also have to agree on the strike date.
Does it start a new development after the development is complete, the whole project?
well, what we tried to do, and that was one of the things that I think we've probably gone back and forth more on, is trying to word that properly. The idea that we have at this point is that, yes, the reimbursement period could be for a maximum of 10 years, but you have to start that time period within 5 years of signing that agreement with the city, and the agreement has to be signed before the project's complete. So a developer, I guess in theory, could start their project and sign an agreement with the city and say, but I don't want my reimbursement to start for 5 years and then go for the 10 years from that time period, with the thought being that, I mean, to get the improvements completed and sell some of the project and get development activity in there, that they need to create the jobs, because that's what we're going to base the reimbursement on. So they may want to push that window for a while, but we didn't want to push it so far that we would sign an agreement and something didn't start for 10 or 15 years down the road. I mean, we were trying to be fair to both sides, but also not create I guess, an administrative accounting burden on the city to say, oh, well, we signed this agreement, but it doesn't start for 15 years, so let's put that back somewhere and start it later on. So that may be, as we work on the policy to make that clear, that starting time may be something that we have to really make sure we clarify for you all, so we all understand that. But yes, we thought that from the development side, they would want to push that time period off, because, I mean, if we say we're going to base it on the income stream, the city says, and the first year they start a project and they haven't created any jobs yet, well, they don't get any money back.
if we went that direction then, and they wanted to delay that, that kind of thing would be spelled out in the development agreement.
That would be
where we
in the
know-
agreement. I mean, when Charlie and Dee Dee and I talked, I mean, we would anticipate that that schedule would be part of the agreement, so everybody knows that,
So that it wouldn't
okay,
change
we're
it.
signing the agreement in 2016, and in this particular project, 2020 is when the reimbursement schedule starts, and it goes then till 2030, and and then have those, as you all pointed out, then have the public improvement saying that, and these are the public improvement costs that are being submitted, and this is what's eligible for reimbursement, and as an incentive, because the developer's doing special street lighting, they qualify for reimbursement at this rate, I mean, whatever the final policy says.
And yet I would contend though, that we all work on this, this is a very impressive document. I'm not sure how the developer feel about it, but from our standpoint, I think that we're gonna find out if we do something like this, that, many smaller projects would have a stimulus to get involved in it, which, and a lot of times they think they're on the back burner, but not only big projects, but I think it would encourage that, and I commend you all for, it's a very comprehensive thing, and I'm very impressed with it. I support it wholeheartedly.
I think it helps us get more of the public-private legislation just passed. This would not, in the case of lighting, this here would in no way keep, developers from receiving other incentives. See from a no-lend that rebate back for putting certain type of lights up.
Yeah, I mean, if they do something that No Lynn or KU would rebate them for, I don't think we would. I mean, we tried to, that one, the back of it after the question 6, yeah, if they participate in this program, they're still eligible for reimbursement from other things, but we put in there, that we wanted to make sure that they were current in anything that they owed to the city though. So, I mean, we don't want to rebate or reimburse somebody if they're not paying their property tax to the city, or they're not paying some other bills. So we would make sure that yes, we are getting paid, but we're also saying that, yeah, if you're eligible for other kinds of programs, then yeah, they can. And like I said, we do have some rebates for sanitary sewer, and there's some programs we do with the gas department as incentives and those kind of things. So because they are not part of these costs, then yes, they would be eligible for that. Yeah, and if they work something out with No Lynn, sure. I mean, unless you all don't think that's appropriate, but the way we wrote the policy so far, yes, they would be eligible for those other kind of programs, Marty.
We provide incentives for large manufacturers. And I think we should provide incentives for other developments.
Okay, well, your all's comments have helped. We'll work on some updates to that and keep bringing it before you till we get it in that final form that everybody's comfortable with.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Are you Russell Chucker? No?
No,
No, you're.
focus.
Have you been there the whole time?
No, he came.
Okay, so the other
later,
guy.
Yeah,
Okay.
but Russell has not come. He's not come.
The gentleman who has been in and out twice, that's Russell Chucker?
No, Russell hasn't been here at all.
Oh, okay, so, all right. I thought maybe, because I didn't know him and I thought maybe.
Yeah, no, I haven't
Okay,
seen him.
anything
no.
else? Okay. Thank you all.
Oh, I've got something.
No, it's too late.
I think, I don't know, both chiefs, I don't know if you all heard about this, but the Elizabethtown Country Club is planning in June a golf tournament that is 100% free to all fire department, police department, emergency responders, EMS, public service, things like that. So if you need more information about it, we can get it, or you can call the Elizabethtown Country Club. But it's just, I think, a nice event that they just want to show some appreciation to all of you guys. And so, it'll be a fun day. I believe it'll be in June, and I believe they do have the date
Shotgun, sorry.
So anyway, that'd be a fun day.
All right, anybody else? Okay, we're adjourned.
I still think that you talk to come that curve off, take off about 15, 20 foot that aisle. Then we could steady in traffic right there. But there's not even any parking spaces where I'm talking about. It starts back at the curb. Finger that goes out there in that aisle. Yeah.
I should wear my glasses all the time.
Helps each other. Yeah. Kenny said he usually